Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Well, thanks for joining us. I am Lindsay Ertz. Let's go inside Utah politics. We're in the final 2 weeks of Utah's legislative session, but that does not mean the task has gotten any smaller. It is a race to the finish with some hot button issues still up for debate. So we thought it'd be a good time to check in with the experts. Joining me now, Adam Gardner and Leah Murray. Thank you both for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, let's dive right in, and a small shout out to our streaming show. You guys are my panelists as well on News for Utah Plus. That is where we stream more political analysis. So if you like the takes here, come on over to our streaming show and watch us there as well. Let's talk about this social media tax bill. This is getting a lot of consternation here on Utah's Capitol Hill. Essentially what it does is it adds a targeted ad revenue tax to major companies. It's supposed to target companies like Meta and Apple and those folks with their social media concerns, but there are some concerns I'm hearing bubbling up that it may capture, the way it's written, some larger companies, perhaps a media company that makes a certain amount of money but also relies on targeted ad revenue. Do you guys think this is the right policy for Utah?
I think overall it's the right policy. I think these big companies like TikTok and Meta, Snapchat, they really only respond to monetary punishment. And that's what I think Senator McKell is trying to do with his bill. I believe the governor's office is backing this as well. This is something they've been pushing for a while, to punish social media companies. This is the right way to do it. To your point, where there's some concern that it could catch up media companies like ABC4 and others into that. That is a concern, and I think there are some things that can be changed on the bill to make sure that we protect local media companies, perhaps even incentivize regional or state small businesses and incentivize them to advertise on with smaller markets in the state of Utah. I think that would be a plus. But to your point, is this the right policy? For what they're trying to do, yes, it seems to be the right policy. Meta, Mark Zuckerberg et al. Really respond to monetary punishments, and this is a way to do that. And it's not like this money just goes into the general fund and this is a giveaway. There are specific things in the bill that this fund that's going to be created, you can use it to actually help mental health for kids, civic education, things like that for kids. So not only are we trying to solve the problem and get them off these addicting devices, but we're now using that money to help our kids.
Leah, the way this bill is written particularly comes out of a case out of Maryland that's actually tied up in federal courts right now. So how does Utah get around whatever Maryland is dealing with in their legal issues?
Yeah, no, I love that question because, first of all, like, that's the coolest thing about federalism is the laboratories of democracy, right? So Maryland is brave. A little bit, I don't buy Mark Zuckerberg standing up and saying to parents, I'm really sorry that your kids got addicted. Like, whatever, dude. So Adam's totally right. If we are going to make them stop doing this badness, you've got to hit a corporation right where it lives, which is in the billions of dollars it's brought in this first quarter. And I love that we sound like pro-tax together, Adam. I don't know. That's a Venn diagram. I like being
That's what federalism does.
But the question is, like, so they're being sued by Maryland's being sued by the alphabet soup that sues these big tech companies, but the Utah law basically says this piece in the Maryland, right? And oh my gosh, my brain just froze.
So it's it's a federal bill that was passed. They're saying this is like has commerce clause issues where states can't regulate and add these different taxes on this type of issue. I don't really feel like that's the case. We're lucky in Utah, the fact that we get to see what Maryland has done. We get to see what the courts are saying, what the charges are, and we can say, we're going to make ours a little bit different. We're in a different court system in the 10th Circuit, so we can be a little different, and we can also be pretty brave in how we approach this. And you have Senator McKell. He's in Senate leadership. He is not dumb. He is an attorney as well, and I don't mean that to be an insult. I think he knows what he's doing on this, and I think if he knows they're going to get sued, I think the members of the legislature get to decide that and say, you know what, this is worth it.
Hashtag worth it. That doesn't deter these lawmakers. We know that.
No.
Threats of lawsuits don't really stop them. We've seen that a lot. Okay, let's move to another topic, Leah, that I know is close to your heart, which is higher education funding, and specifically Utah State University. Last year, we ran a bill to make all of higher ed reallocate all of their funds. Everyone got their money back except Utah State because of some potentially nefarious misuse of taxpayer dollars from the past president. Now they have a new president in Brad Mortensen, former Weber State president, who is now trying to kind of clean up the mess there. It was just voted on this week that USU will get their 10% money back. It equates to about $12.6 million, I believe. What does that say to you? Is that good? I mean, obviously it's good news for them. What does it say to you?
Right, it's always good for an agency to have its money to do its job, right? So a little bit, $12.6 million is a huge budget hole, right, that they would have had to fill otherwise. I think it is important that President Mortensen is there and has a understanding that the university system is a public agency, is accountable to taxpayer dollars, which means we are accountable to the people who pay or write the check, right? Like who appropriate the money. And so a little bit, I think, how do I say? I want real accountability. I think there's another bill rolling through here about presidents and who they answer to, and how do we make sure that we're auditing them if we have to. So I'm happy for Utah State. It is not enough to say the university is doing well dependent on who the president is. I think we need some institutional protections against universities not behaving well in the future.
Yeah, Adam, there was a bidet purchased with some of these funds.
That was the purchase that I thought was worth it. I thought you don't need 2 golf carts and 3 trucks. You need a bidet?
Yes.
Awesome.
Brad Mortensen was on this very show, and I asked him if he was a bidet guy, because the bidet is now in his office. So you just...
What did he say?
He said, that's too much information.
He was like TMI.
Yeah,
on the show.
exactly.
Yeah. No, I legit asked him, I'm like, are you going to remove it? Because what they did with the golf carts, which was adorable, was drive students around to campus, right?
Yeah.
So basically Brad is out there meeting students, driving them around. And he said, I think he told me it was more expensive to remove the bidet at this point. So actually, it's just going to be there forever.
It's not a monument. Use it.
Adam, just quickly here, do you like what the state has done with higher education funding when it came to this exercise of we need to cut 10% from everybody, we need to combine colleges, we need to combine programs? Are you liking the direction of higher ed?
Yes, I definitely am. What I think was great about the higher ed kind of reorganization or reallocating money was they spent a year doing it. It wasn't like at the beginning of the session we're going to have this exercise and by the end we're going to punish certain universities and reward others. That's not what they did. They really took their time, and I think the committees, the universities really put a lot of effort into it. You had the University of Utah who came back and said, hey, we have tons of majors that are graduating 1 and 2 people a year and we're keeping them funded. It was a good exercise to say, no, we shouldn't be doing that. Yeah. There are other areas where we can reallocate resources. At Weber State, they said, this is an opportunity for us to focus on what we do best. Nursing, engineering, other things was really important. And the Walker Institute of Politics.
Of which Leah is the director.
There's a lot of things we're doing really well. Let's reallocate some of those resources here. And the legislature really responded positively. And they responded positively to Weber State University and Brad Mortensen and Jessica Euler. What they proposed to the legislature, that was accepted. And that was good.
Yeah.
And so when this audit came out, they said, we're going to hold these funds for Brad and Jessica to go into Utah State University. And after an audit is a really great time to be in charge, because everyone's recognizing there are problems and now you get to come in and fix them.
And be the hero.
And that is exactly what they're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess I would add too, the larger conversation around what is the role of higher education across the state of Utah, including tech colleges, right? Being thoughtful around how do students come out of high school, where do they go, if they need further credentialing, if they need a degree, how do we make sure we don't lose, do you know what I mean, students along the way? Is it possible for someone who's later thinking, oh, now I need this credential or this certificate or this degree to further my career? And just being thoughtful about the people that we serve and making sure that our higher education system does a good job doing that. And a little bit, I think, this was a disruptive moment, and I think Utah State took a lot of the heat, but all of us need to be thoughtful about it and really address those issues.
A lot of lessons learned for sure. Okay, just quickly here in our last couple of minutes, there's another bill that's gotten a lot of consternation here on Capitol Hill, and that is the public money we give to illegal immigrants. Trevor Lee's running a bill meant to end public benefits for immigrants in the country illegally. Guys, just your takes here on this plan. A lot of people seeing it as another targeted piece against illegal immigration, which some people say is necessary.
It is targeted towards illegal immigrants. There's been a lot of pushback from the Trump administration, and I think Republicans in general, and this is something that I think Republicans have believed for a long time. The federal government makes it illegal to receive, for illegal immigrants to receive federal benefits. There's a reason for that. You don't want to, it's weird because we want to say the United States is the place where we want everyone to come. We're a melting pot. Everyone should feel welcome here, but you got to come in the right way. And if you don't, you are not entitled to the benefits that citizens pay for and receive. So that's the argument here. But what's happening is states are saying, okay, the federal government won't pay for that, so we'll pay for our citizens, but then money that we're not paying somewhere else, we just shift money around. And we could say, yes, we'll pay for an illegal immigrant child's free lunch. We'll pay for some immunizations because that benefits our kids too, for everyone to be immunized. Or there's other things that we do to kind of fill those gaps. Is it good for people in our community to go hungry? You watched a really good debate that I hope your viewers will go and look at. But on this bill, Representative Trevor Lee, he had his talking points about, no, we don't want to be attractive to illegal immigrants to come to our state. We don't want to have great benefits for them. We want them to go somewhere else. And then you had Representative Andrew Stoddard, a Democrat from Murray in Midvale, who was saying, no, we're responsible to take care of the least of us, and we're not going to let these kids go hungry and cold. And so it was this real kind of ideological battle that was really fun to watch.
Yeah, the bill did pass out of committee. Leo, we're out of time. So if you want to give me a quick, necessary or cruel kind of take, or...
Yeah, my take a little bit askew is the public agents. So basically what they're asking is now I, at the intake point, am supposed to assess whether this person is a citizen or not. That I think is problematic because I don't think public servants should be adding that to their workload or being worried about what happens if they assess something wrong.
If someone shows up at a food bank, you turn them away, and then you could be liable for, or you accept them, right? You could be liable for that under Trevor Lee's bill. So we'll watch and see if it moves through the legislature. Adam Gardner, Leah Murray, thanks for your time today. My thanks again to the panel. Still ahead here on Inside Utah Politics, issues affecting the LGBTQ community have yet to get to the governor's desk. Equality Utah joins us to dig into the slate of bills they're watching in the final days.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Well, welcome back. I'm joined today by Marina Lowe. She's the policy director with Equality Utah. Marina, thanks for joining Inside Utah Politics.
My pleasure.
Okay, so Equality Utah has done a ton of LGBTQ policy work here on Utah's Capitol Hill, and you're widely respected and widely known. Your group is for the way you tackle some of this legislation. So just walk me through the slate of bills that you're kind of watching this session that bring you concern.
Yeah, I'd love to say at the outset too, this is, I think, the 5th year in a row we've seen legislation really targeting the trans community in particular. I thought we'd legislated around every issue that could be touched, but in fact, the legislature has more to offer. Probably the top of the list would be Trevor Lee's legislation. This is a bill, I believe the number is HB 183, that just touches on a whole host of different issues. It essentially would remove trans people from Utah's non-discrimination statute, and so would allow for discrimination in terms of housing and employment, meaning you could discriminate against somebody in one of those two areas just because they happen to be trans. It removes trans people from the victim targeting statute, which means that a hate crime could not be prosecuted against a trans person simply because the crime was committed because they are trans. It would remove the ability to change your birth certificate. Amazingly, this bill basically removes trans people from the entire Utah code except for in one particular area, which is that Utah code actually says you can't get a license plate that disparages somebody based on a characteristic such as your race or your gender. It leaves in that you could go ahead and get a license plate that disparages against a trans person. So really, a harmful, hateful piece of legislation in my mind. I do hear that he has substitute language. I'm glad to hear that because the bill in its current form is really problematic.
I've had conversations with Trevor Lee, and he doesn't come across as a hateful person.
He doesn't.
His persona online appears to be that way. And so when you are negotiating these bills and you talk to these lawmakers, how do you work through some of those issues?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that. I don't think he's a hateful person either, and I hope that wasn't his intent. I'm just speaking to the pure policy that these are hard policies, right? A bill that says that one group of people is not, subject to the protections that everyone else is afforded. It's hard to understand sort of that perspective. We've had lots of conversations with him to sort of explain the ways in which this bill would be harmful. And I have to believe that the fact that there is a substitute bill out there means that he's hearing that message. We'll see whether this bill gets any traction this year, but I'm at least hopeful to see that he has responded by making some significant changes.
I mean, does he say things to you though, like, well, they shouldn't have these protections? Is that the motivation? Because giving him the benefit of the doubt, he's not here to defend himself, right?
Yeah, right. No, I don't. I've never heard him say those things explicitly. It's hard to know what his exact motivation is. But I represent a community that sees these bills come and feels very under attack. When they see protections being removed for their own safety, from their ability to have gainful employment, to have a safe place to live. These are things that all of us need and want in order to live fulfilled, comfortable, happy lives. It's hard to interpret that in a way that doesn't feel really harmful.
Well, and this is why your organization is well respected on Capitol Hill, because you're able to have these conversations with the Republican supermajority at the state and kind of bridge this gap where you're not seeing anyone as hateful or harmful, but you're addressing the policy that you believe could be perceived as harmful.
Yep,
right?
Exactly.
Okay, so another bill that is moving through, I want to be clear that bill hasn't really moved.
It hasn't moved, yeah exactly.
It hasn't really done anything, so we don't know if that bill is going to make it anywhere. But one that has moved would prevent transgender people from using any public assistance to get any medical care. Do we do this right now? Do we give public assistance to transgender people in any way?
So I think that what the bill is really focused on is any sort of public insurance. So things like the Public Insurance Healthcare Plan. I think that's what the acronym PHP stands for. So I think that is the goal, is to end that sort of provision for transgender individuals wanting to get gender-affirming care. Probably Medicaid as well would also fall within the definition of public insurance. What I think is significant about this piece of legislation, and you're right to point out that this bill is moving. In fact, it's got its second hearing, I think today, this afternoon in the Senate, so it's already made it all the way through the House. What's significant about this bill is it is the first time we're really seeing legislation from the legislature focused on trans adults rather than trans children. I think the real harm that we are concerned about is the consequences for trans individuals who are currently receiving care from some of these public streams that would get that care interrupted. And I think there are real ethical, serious questions posed when somebody is receiving health care and then is having that health care cut off because of a policy passed by the legislature.
Another bill that is also moving, it's on Senate second reading calendar, House Bill 174 would take this moratorium that we had on gender-affirming care for minors and make it a permanent ban. This is something we did, was it last session, 2 sessions ago?
It was a couple sessions ago now, yes.
Now Congressman Mike Kennedy, I think, championed that bill. So what do you make of moving from the moratorium to the ban? I know there's been some carve-outs for where people who are already transitioning have some extra time because, to your point just now, you didn't want to just take care away from them and stop them cold turkey. So where do you feel like this bill has landed?
To be perfectly honest with you, the difference, practically speaking, between a moratorium with no end and a ban is pretty minimal. What I think the more significant part of this legislation really is around that, what you mentioned, this grandfathered group of young people who were protected under the original legislation sponsored by now Congressman Mike Kennedy. He wanted to be sure that we weren't interrupting care, understanding as a physician that there are dangers really with stopping medication once somebody has started down that course of treatment. And so this bill would limit which of those grandfathered patients can continue on with their care. There were some changes made in committee just yesterday to expand the amount of time so as to get a little closer to what the legislature's original promise to those young people was back when Kennedy's bill passed. But I think that's the real import of the bill as it moves forward at this point.
So as we kind of zoom out and look at all these bills as a whole, how would you stack up this session when it comes to transgender legislation compared to the last, you mentioned 5 sessions in a row where we've had some sort of targeted legislation?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's exhaustion, quite honestly, with everybody on this topic. I've even heard from lawmakers that it feels like we've kind of covered this topic, and are there really things that we need to continue legislating? I would say from the trans community, I think there's a lot of I don't even know if exhaustion is the right word. I think they feel fearful that every aspect of their lives has been legislated around, and their very existence is sort of under threat. And so I think it's hard to see bills every year get introduced by the legislature impacting different areas of their lives.
We'll have to leave it there. Marina Lowe with Equality Utah. Thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Coming up still here on Inside Utah Politics, Utah's redistricting case was in a federal court this week. We walk through the arguments straight ahead.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Well, the biggest political issue off of Utah's Capitol Hill remains the battle over congressional lines. Now, at the time of this recording, we have not gotten a decision in Utah's state-level lawsuit, but earlier this week, the federal suit had its first hearing. Arcade Gardner was there and breaks down the arguments.
This hearing comes after the Utah legislature asked the state's high court to halt the recent redistricting ruling ahead of the 2026 election and instead use the state's congressional map from 2021. Cameras weren't allowed in the courtroom.
We have no interest in partisan politics. This is all about fair maps. That's what we want. That's what we will get.
But we were able to speak to attorneys from both parties as they left for the day.
I think for purposes of the Constitution, the legislature described in the elections clause is the legislature that sits over in the Capitol. It's not all of us.
The case, brought forward by elected officials, alleges that the decision by the Utah 3rd District Court judge to enact Utah's new congressional map was unconstitutional. It aims to stop Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson from implementing the new map. The panel of judges grilled the parties on 3 topics. 1, their standing, meaning have elected officials been harmed by the new map? 2, does the new map go against the Purcell principle, which is the doctrine stating courts should not change election rules too close to an election? And 3, merits to the claim, which again goes back to the main question. Does a state judge have the ability to impose a new map?
This is just a kitchen sink effort to, try to get the map to change, try any court. And the federal case law that this court has to consider today is clear that state courts are empowered to impose maps and have an obligation under federal law to do that.
The judges did not set a timeline for when a decision will be made, and the legislature is asking that the state Supreme Court weigh in by this Friday. Reporting from Salt Lake City, Cade Garner, ABC4 News.
Well, that does it for today's Inside Utah Politics. Stay with us and stay in touch with us on social media, won't you? You can find me on X and Threads, Lindsay on Air, Lindsay spelled with an A, also on Instagram. You can also find this show in podcast form wherever you get your politics, or your podcast rather, search for Inside Utah Politics. And if you're looking for more national political coverage, check out our political power ranker. Our next star national political director and the head of Emerson College polling look at who's up and who's down in the world of politics based on the data. We carry that for you, plus more analysis on our free streaming app. It's called News for Utah Plus. You can download that on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, and newer Samsung devices. Well, thanks for joining us. We will see you next week.